I walked in and saw my sister on my couch wearing my husband's shirt. The betrayal burned, but I made sure they never saw the storm coming. Julia had always believed that when a marriage ends, the pain comes in waves, the kind that crashes unexpectedly, slowly weakening you each time. But nothing could have prepared her for what she walked into that Friday evening. She was supposed to be away until Sunday night, a business trip 2 hours outside Toronto. But her final meeting got cancelled, and she thought she'd surprise Adam with dinner, maybe a bottle of wine. Despite everything, they were still civil. Their divorce papers were already scheduled to be signed next Friday. She wanted to end it peacefully, with dignity. But peace ended the second she pulled into her driveway and saw a car she knew far too well. Selena's. Her younger sister. Her best friend once. The one who cried at Julia's wedding. The one who used to send her memes at midnight and text "I miss you" just because. Julia hadn't expected Selena to visit that weekend. In fact, Selena had told her she'd be in Montreal visiting a friend. Julia felt it immediately. That cold, metallic tightening in her chest. The one that warns you something's off before your mind even catches up. Still, she held her breath. Walked up the steps and unlocked the front door. Silence. Then the faint sound of the television. She stepped into the living room and everything froze. Selena was on the couch. Hair damp from a shower, bare legs tucked under a throw blanket. But what made Julia's stomach drop was the shirt she wore. Adam's gray t-shirt. The one he wore every Sunday morning. The one Julia always borrowed when she had a cold. The one that still smelled like his cologne. Selena's face drained of color the moment she saw Julia standing there. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her hands clutched the throw blanket tighter, trying to hide behind it. Her eyes didn't carry shame. Just panic. Adam walked in from the kitchen holding 2 cups of coffee. He froze mid-step, cups rattling slightly as he realized what had just happened. One look at his face confirmed everything. He didn't even try to lie. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darted toward the floor. Julia didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Her heart was breaking so loudly inside her chest it felt deafening, but not a sound came out of her mouth. She looked at them both, her husband and her sister, and something inside her broke, but not the way they expected. It wasn't weakness. It was awakening. She nodded once. That's all. Just a nod. Then turned around, picked up her suitcase from the hallway, and walked back out the front door. The cold Toronto air slapped her face as she stepped outside, but it grounded her. She got into her car, hands shaking slightly, but her mind was already racing. Not with grief. Not with fury. But with something else entirely. Control. Selena didn't follow her out. Adam didn't call her name. That silence told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It had been going on. And they were never planning to tell her. Let them think she was broken. Let them assume she was defeated. That she'd be the story they whispered about at family gatherings. Julia the poor, abandoned wife. Julia the woman who lost everything. They didn't realize she hadn't lost anything. They did. And soon, they would understand just how badly. For the next 3 days, Julia vanished. No one heard from her, not her friends, not her parents, not even her boss. Her phone remained off. Her apartment lights stayed dim. She moved like a ghost through her own life, quietly, intentionally. Not because she was weak or devastated, but because she needed space to breathe, to think, to understand how deep the betrayal went. She didn't cry. That surprised even her. She expected tears, maybe a meltdown, maybe a phone thrown across the room. But there was none of that. Instead, she sat in the stillness of her apartment, staring at the ceiling as memories unraveled like threads from a sweater. All the moments she had dismissed, now they made sense. Now they stung. Selena's sly comments at family dinners. The way she always offered to help clean up at Julia and Adam's parties and somehow ended up alone with him in the kitchen. The time Julia caught her sister wearing Adam's hoodie and brushed it off as borrowing. How Adam would always defend Selena when Julia pointed out how clingy she was acting. "She's your sister," he'd say with a smirk. "Stop being paranoid." Julia hadn't wanted to see it. Who wants to believe their own sister would cross that line? But in hindsight, the signs had been screaming at her. And now she was done ignoring them. She stood in front of her mirror that morning and made a promise to herself, not to fight for Adam, not to win him back. But to take control of her life, her dignity, her power. They thought they'd left her in ruins. But she wasn't ruined. She was being rebuilt. That afternoon, Julia walked into the small storage closet near her bedroom. Tucked in a labeled box beneath old tax returns and her college degree was a folder she hadn't touched in 5 years. It was her contribution agreement to Adam's business. Back when Adam started his digital marketing agency, Julia was the one who helped him get it off the ground. He was passionate but reckless, terrible with money, unorganized, but full of ideas. She had taken her modest inheritance from her grandfather and invested it in the business. She helped file the paperwork, signed her name on the registration, and even co-signed the bank account because Adam's credit was terrible at the time. He always said it didn't matter, that she was family, and family didn't keep score. But Julia had kept records. She opened the folder, her heart beating fast as she scanned the documents. Her name was still there. Clear as day. Legal co-owner. 49%, officially. But what caught her attention most was a clause, a line she had forgotten about. In the event of any major decision regarding sale, rebranding, or merger, both signatures were required. Julia leaned back against the wall and let the implications settle in. Adam never removed her from the business. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he assumed she wouldn't care. Maybe he believed she'd be too heartbroken to notice. That was his mistake. Let him think she was curled up crying, broken over their affair. Let Selena giggle in his apartment thinking she had one. Julia wasn't coming for Adam's love. She didn't want it. She didn't need it. She was coming for what she helped build. What she legally owned. What they had so carelessly assumed was theirs alone. And this old document in her hand? This was the beginning. The first crack in the wall she was about to tear down. Julia sat at her kitchen table with the old business documents spread out like puzzle pieces. It was strange, even amusing, how Adam had treated her like she was disposable when half of what he had built was legally still tied to her name. The more she read, the more she realized, this wasn't just a dormant signature. It was leverage. The clause about dual sign-off on major decisions was only the beginning. She also found proof of her initial financial investment, an amount that had practically funded Adam's launch. Julia had wired that money directly from her inheritance account, trusting him, believing in him. She had even met his first client with him in those early days, sitting across boardroom tables pretending to be his assistant while managing the back-end logistics of the business herself. Adam had called her his lucky charm. Apparently, he thought lucky charms could be discarded. She opened her laptop and began gathering more information. She pulled bank statements, transaction histories, and company filings. She searched for names on current contracts, lease agreements, supplier lists, anything that could give her a better picture of how the business operated now. What she discovered surprised her. Adam hadn't grown much since their split. His company had gotten a facelift, a better logo, a few more clients, but the structure was still as disorganized as when she left. Worse, he had started dipping into company funds for personal expenses. Travel charges. Hotel stays. Spa receipts. And not for business trips. Julia cross-referenced the dates with her calendar and laughed quietly. He'd been taking Selena on romantic getaways using company money. This was more than betrayal. It was grounds for investigation. Julia sent an inquiry to a corporate law firm she'd been connected with during her last job. She requested a private consultation with one of their business litigation specialists. The assistant on the other end asked if it was urgent. Julia smiled as she responded. "It's time sensitive, but I'd like to do this right." 2 days later, she was sitting in a sleek downtown office across from a lawyer named Dana. Calm, smart, and instantly sharp. Dana reviewed the documents and barely looked up before confirming. "You still legally own 49%. And based on these spending reports, you have every right to call for an internal audit." Julia leaned back in her chair and nodded. There was no satisfaction in her eyes. No gloating. Just a steady, cold awareness that she now had the upper hand. Dana laid out her options. Julia could go the quiet route, freeze company spending until Adam addressed the financial concerns. Or she could bring in an auditor and make things public. Julia wasn't ready to blow everything up. Not yet. No. She wanted this to unfold slowly. Deliberately. Let Adam and Selena believe they'd won. Let them keep enjoying their little world together. Meanwhile, she'd prepare hers. Quietly. Intelligently. Julia knew from the beginning that she wasn't going to destroy Adam. That would be too easy. She wanted him to watch as everything slipped from his hands. Not in rage. In realization. That he had underestimated her. That he had handed over half his empire when he signed her name all those years ago. He just didn't know it yet. And Selena? She would learn that betrayal doesn't guarantee a throne. Especially not when you steal it from the woman who helped build the castle. Julia stood up from that meeting a different woman. She walked out of that office not with revenge in her heart, but with a plan in her hands. She had found her weapon. And now, the game was about to begin. Adam walked into his office on Monday morning with a latte in one hand and Selena on his arm, smug and certain. The company had just closed a new contract with a big Toronto-based client, and he was already bragging about it on Instagram. Life, in his eyes, was perfect. Until his assistant handed him an envelope. It was from a law firm. Julia's name was listed at the top of the letterhead. His hands trembled slightly as he tore it open. Inside was a formal notice requesting a financial audit of the company. Attached were documents showing Julia's continued 49% ownership and a breakdown of suspicious spending flagged for review. His face drained of color. Selena leaned over his shoulder, reading it too. "What the hell is this?" she asked, her voice shrill. Adam didn't answer. His heart pounded as he flipped through the papers again and again. Julia hadn't just come back, she'd come back with a strategy. That afternoon, a forensic accountant arrived unannounced. Hired through Julia's attorney. She had full authority to review every financial document. Employees whispered as she walked through the office, scanning files and asking pointed questions. Adam tried to act calm. He called Julia that night, but she didn't pick up. He texted. "Can we talk? This is all a misunderstanding." No reply. Meanwhile, Julia was busy. She had found an investor interested in Adam's company, a woman-led firm that admired her early involvement and saw potential if Julia took more control. But Julia wasn't planning a takeover just yet. She wanted Adam to sweat. To feel the walls close in. At work, tensions began to rise. The accountant found irregularities in payroll. Selena had been added to the books as a consultant making a hefty monthly income. Julia's lawyer flagged it. Adam tried to backdate documents to justify it, but the dates didn't match the company's hiring logs. In private, Adam exploded. "I built this company," he screamed at Selena one night. "She was just the bank." Selena scoffed. "If she was just the bank, why is she tearing it down now?" The cracks between them deepened. Selena didn't enjoy the pressure. She liked being the beautiful secret, not the public scandal. Whispers spread in their social circle. Friends unfollowed them online. Clients grew nervous. Some paused contracts altogether until the audit concluded. Adam's board called an emergency meeting. Julia appeared on video call, poised, composed, in a sharp navy blazer. She didn't raise her voice. She simply explained the audit findings, her ownership rights, and the damage Adam's recklessness had caused. The board was stunned. They had no idea Julia still had so much power. One member asked gently, "What would it take for you to consider returning in some capacity?" Julia smiled faintly. "Let's see how the next few weeks go." Back at home, Adam tried to rally. He begged Selena to stick by him, promising this would all blow over. But she had started packing. "I didn't sign up for war." A dinner meeting. Neutral ground. He chose an upscale rooftop restaurant downtown, one they used to frequent when things were good, back when they were a team. Julia considered ignoring it, but she knew better. This wasn't about closure. It was about power. And she never missed a closing move. She arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in all black. Sharp heels. No jewelry. Calm, collected, and unreadable. When Adam walked in, he was alone. No Selena. Just him, looking a little thinner, a little paler, a lot more nervous. He gave her a weak smile and slid into the seat across from her. "Thanks for coming," he said. Julia sipped her water. "You asked." "I'm listening." Adam fumbled through his words, trying to sound casual. He blamed stress. Miscommunication. Even tried to play the sympathy card. "I wasn't thinking clearly. Things were falling apart. I made mistakes." Julia didn't flinch. "You made choices." He tried again. "We can fix this, Jules. I'll offer you a payout for your share. Clean break. You get what's yours, I move on, and no one gets hurt." That's when she placed the folder on the table. Slowly. Deliberately. Inside were the audit findings. Unauthorized expenses. Falsified records. Selena's name on inflated invoices. A detailed report outlining misuse of funds that could be legally classified as fraud. Adam's face fell. "You wouldn't." "I don't have to," she said. "The board already has a copy." He swallowed hard. "This could ruin me." Julia tilted her head. "You ruined yourself." He leaned forward, desperate. "What do you want?" That question. "What do you want?" It echoed in her head. "I want you to understand what you threw away," she said quietly. "I want you to watch what I do with it." He sat back, defeated. "You're not the woman I married." "No," she said. She was naive. "I outgrew her." The waiter arrived to take their order. Julia stood up. "I won't be staying for dinner." Adam stared at her as she walked away, back straight. Unshaken. She didn't look back. 2 days later, the board voted to remove him as CEO. Julia was appointed as interim executive director while restructuring took place. The investor she brought in quietly bought out Adam's remaining shares, leaving him with nothing but a severance check and a reputation in shambles. Selena never resurfaced. Word was she moved out of the city. No apology. No explanation. Just absence. Julia didn't need either of them. She didn't just survive the betrayal. She turned it into a blueprint for power. It was nearly spring in Toronto when Julia moved into her new apartment, high above the city skyline, where the past felt small and the future looked infinite. The worst was over. She hadn't just walked away from the wreckage, she rebuilt from it, brick by brick. Adam was officially out. Her investor, who turned out to be more of a mentor than a partner, helped her pivot the company into something new. Fresh leadership, transparent policies, and a mission that finally aligned with her values. At first, Julia wasn't sure if she even wanted to stay in the business. But she realized something: she loved the work, not the people who tried to take it from her. She didn't need revenge anymore. She had results. Her days became a blend of quiet power and purpose. She began mentoring young women founders, those who reminded her of herself 5 years ago, sitting in meetings, ignored, doubted, dismissed. She taught them how to read the fine print, how to protect themselves, how to build without burning out. And then came the gala. It was her first public appearance since the scandal broke. A non-profit fundraiser for women in tech, and Julia had been invited as a keynote speaker. She stood at the podium in a dark emerald gown, the lights warm on her face. The room was filled with venture capitalists, founders, reporters, and people who used to whisper about her in hallways. Not anymore. My story isn't about betrayal, she said. She said, it's about what happens after. After the lies. After the silence. After you think it's over. The room went quiet. Some people get destroyed by betrayal. Others use it as blueprint. I was underestimated in my marriage, in my business, and even in my own family. But let me tell you something. She paused, her voice calm but firm. Your strength isn't loud. It doesn't beg for applause. It shows up in the decisions you make when no one is watching. And if you're ever lucky enough to be underestimated, good. That means they'll never see you coming. A standing ovation followed. Later that evening, someone from the press asked her what she'd say if she saw her sister again. Julia smiled. I'd thank her. The reporter blinked. Seriously? Yes, Julia said. Because if she hadn't betrayed me, I'd still be playing small. Sometimes, the worst people in your life give you the best push. That night, she returned home to her quiet apartment, poured herself a glass of wine, and stood by the window, looking out over the glowing city. She didn't need Adam. Or Selena. Or closure. She had herself. And that was more than enough. As she turned off the lights and headed to bed, her phone buzzed. A message from one of her ments. I just signed my first investor deal. Because of you. Julia smiled. Her story had started with betrayal. But it ended with legacy. If Julia's journey moved you, if you've ever been betrayed, underestimated, or forced to rebuild from nothing, then hit that like button right now. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that quiet strength is still strength. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of women who rise from the ashes and write their own ending.